Hi, I'm Morrison and welcome to New Mexico. It is a beautiful sunny Sunday here on the ranch just outside of Santa Fe. I'm making this video today as a follow-up to a video that I made almost 5 years ago. And that video was my story of moving to New Mexico from the metro area of Washington, D.C. Now, I'm making this video for a specific group of people. Several dozen people that have contacted me since I made the video that wanted to say thank you for making it. I've also felt drawn to New Mexico, and some of them contacted me more specifically about, where, if I was coming to New Mexico, where would I live? What about housing? What about work? All that sort of thing. And those were things that I didn't even consider really when I moved here, because I just knew that I was supposed to be in New Mexico. And I had the feeling that all those things would sort themselves out. How to make a living, where to live, making new friends, all that sort of thing. And in fact, that did happen. When I first moved here, things just went exceedingly well. And I decided to take a few months off. I'd worked hard for 40 years. I thought, I really don't want to have to get up on Monday morning or Tuesday or Wednesday morning and go to work. So I decided to take more or less 3 months off and just enjoy myself, get to know the lay of the land, get to know Santa Fe and New Mexico. I'd go hiking 3 or 4 times a week and go to plays and go to all sorts of musical, cultural events. But at the end of those 3 months, I started to get a bit bored. And of course, I needed to figure out a way to make a living. Because I have been self-employed a good deal of my life, I decided that I was going to start a business. So I started working on creating a business. It just wasn't coming together for me. And I worked on it for several months, and then I started looking at something else and started working on that. I couldn't make it happen. I used to be able to force my way through the world and make things happen for me, but when I got here, that just didn't work anymore. And it was kind of baffling because I'd always had quite a bit of success making my way in the world. So after about a year of trying to get these businesses up and going, nothing was happening. Now when I got here, I had a fairly big pot of gold. I had quite a bit of savings. And I had been using those savings to live on until such time as I was able to generate more money, or some money. And each month that I'm here, the pot of gold is getting a little bit smaller every month as I pay the rent and buy groceries and buy gas and all those things that we all have to do on a regular basis. So I decided that I needed to look for a job. And I looked for a job for several months. I can't tell you how many job applications I did online. Sending out resumes, willing to do jobs that I was qualified for, but I really didn't want to do. And of course, that pot of gold is continuing to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And then just a little over 3 years ago, I got on my computer one morning to check my bank account, and I discovered I only had $205 in the bank. And that was literally all the money that I had. I no longer had any savings, any investments, any property, anything. There was a bolt of fear went right through my chest. It almost knocked me off my chair, quite literally. And I was in this place where, how am I going to survive? How am I going to pay rent, which was due in just a few days? How am I going to buy groceries? How am I going to pay my car insurance and put gas in it and all that stuff? And I was just in this huge amount of fear. I called up a number of friends that day not looking for money, but I was looking for some solace. And they gave it to me, and that helped me feel a bit better. That evening, while my dinner was cooking, I went out into the courtyard of the house I was living in, and there was a big rock in the courtyard, and I climbed up on it, and I was gazing out over the valley of the Rio Grande. This voice in my head said, "This is your biggest blessing." Now, it really didn't feel like a biggest blessing. I wondered how I was going to survive. I didn't know if I was going to make it. I was in this great fear. I was familiar with the voice because I had heard it one time before, and I knew it wasn't my voice. But that made me feel considerably better, like, okay, if this is a big blessing, then there is some hope. There's some pony in the pile of you know what. And after that day, the fear went away. And I can't really explain that, but it completely left me. Not for good, but for several months. A number of things happened during that period. First of all, despite the fact that I wasn't able to get a job for several months prior to my financial meltdown, a week later I had a job offer. Now, it was a part-time job, and it's a job I'm still doing, but it was only like 20 hours a week, I think it was at that point. The pay was decent for New Mexico, but it was only a small fraction of what I was used to making. But I was really grateful to have a job at all, to have some money coming in. But the issue became, even though now I had some money coming in, I couldn't pay both my rent and buy groceries. So what was I going to do? I had to make a choice. I'm either going to be fed and cold, or I'm going to be warm and hungry. Didn't seem like a very good choice to have to make. So I was talking to a friend, and she said, "Why don't you get on the SNAP program?" And if you're not familiar with the SNAP program, that is encompasses what food stamps used to be. So I got on food stamps, and it was a lifesaver. I was able to eat, not necessarily buy all the things that I was accustomed to buying. My diet, the quality of my diet declined because to some degree I had to go for quantity versus quality. But it kept me fed, and I was able to pay the rent. Now, I wasn't able to do anything like go to a movie or go out to eat or anything like that. There just wasn't any money available to do that. So I was really careful with the money that I spent. But I got by. I discovered after, it was about 10 months after starting on food stamps, that I gained some more hours and responsibility at work, so I was making more money there. I discovered that I could afford to buy my own groceries. So the Health and Human Resources people for the state called me that administer the SNAP program. I told them I didn't want to reapply, and I think it's imperative that we accept help when we need to, but it's also imperative that we take responsibility for ourselves as much as we can. So I got off of food stamps. That actually decreased my standard of living a little bit, because now I was having to buy, $150, $200, whatever worth of groceries every month. But, again, I was able to get by. And over the course of time, I started making more money at work. I was doing okay. And in addition to that, I started doing pet sitting gigs for a few people. And I also started doing commercial video work. So I had these side gigs that were making me some extra money, and they made all the difference. They allowed me to save money. I've actually got a savings account now that's got real cash in it. And it allowed me to do some of the things that I previously hadn't been able to, like go to a movie and go out to dinner with a friend. And it also allowed me to acquire more camera equipment and audio equipment and all the things that I needed to have to produce videos for people. As I mentioned earlier, I literally didn't have anything left. I thought, okay, I need to do life differently, because what I have done for the 50 plus years prior to that in forcing my way through the world obviously just wasn't working anymore. So I had nothing left to lose by taking a new perspective on life, and that's really what it came down to, is how you look at life. How do you look at your life? How do you look at yourself? What do you see? What is your perspective on the world and the events that are taking place? It's all about perspective. And if you think that the world is going to hell in a handbasket, or your life is going to hell in a handbasket, then it is. Over the last few years, I've been able to change my perspectives about a lot of things and recognize that all the things that I believed about myself and about the world wasn't necessarily true. Right now, I'm at least as happy as I've ever been in life, despite the fact that I have nowhere near the means that I used to have at one time. But I'm doing okay. I don't know what life is going to bring. I've got some plans, some things that I would like to do, some things I'd like to create. And how that's going to happen, I really don't have a clue. But I believe that life is a grand adventure. And the saddest thing that I can think of is not going on that adventure. I don't want to just work for someone else and make money, large or small, and die thinking that I didn't really live. So this is what's gone on in my life for the last few years. It's been a time of incredible personal growth for me, spiritual growth. It's been really challenging. It's been a time of great loss and a time of great gain. I would love to have my money back again, but if it came down to a choice between having the money that I used to have and being who I am now, it was worth the money. Now I'm going to continue to make some videos, not at the frantic pace I did 5 years ago, but I will be doing them periodically on various subjects. I'm not exactly sure where it's all going to go yet. As I felt the call to move to New Mexico, I'm feeling the call to make more videos and maybe a movie, a documentary movie or movies. That really hasn't come into any sort of fruition yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I want to tell people stories that are meaningful or might be meaningful to some people that may help them in some way. So thank you for being here. I appreciate you tuning in. Hope you will again. Cambia el mundo. So I was feeling shame and guilt and stupid and just completely less than in so many ways. I remember going into the store to buy some groceries and sticking my EBT card, my SNAP card, into the machine, and knowing that the cashier on the other side could see that I was a food stamp person. And, you know, Just made me feel bad. But the beautiful thing that came from that ultimately was that I developed much more empathy and compassion for those that are underprivileged. And you may try and imagine what it's like to have very little. But until you actually experience it, you cannot appreciate what it's really like. Whatever the reason that the underprivileged are underprivileged, they need our help, and we should give it to them. We need to show some compassion. We don't know their stories, although we make up stories in our minds about how they are lazy or whatever the case may be. But we need to look after our neighbors. And we're not doing that in this country right now. If we're going to be a great nation, then we need to have empathy, we need to have compassion, we need to help when people need help.